Every season there are a few matches that stand out in the football calendar and that we at Copper 90 look forward to most. They're the matches that matter most to the fans. The matches that throw up the hardest tackles, the loudest atmospheres and the most emotional celebrations. We are, of course, talking about Clasicos, where mutual hatred goes far beyond the borders of just one city. So this is Copper 90's Top 10 Clasicos. At 10, we're heading to Belgium for a rivalry that made world headlines earlier in the year. The Clasico between traditional giants Anderlecht and recent riser Standard Liege has escalated beyond recognition since their meeting in January this year, where Standard fans unveiled a banner depicting the severed head of former midfielder Steven Defour. What did this player do to provoke this sort of reaction? Move to their rivals Anderlecht. That is how much both clubs despise each other. The episode may now be in the past after widespread condemnation, threats of 5-year stadium bans and hefty fines, but this is one Clasico to keep an eye on for the future for sure. At 9, it's the Moroccan Clasico between Raja Casablanca and FARRabat. The geographical proximity of Rabat and Morocco's capital and fellow coastal city Casablanca has fueled this rivalry for years. On the pitch, it's as good as any Clasico in terms of the support, atmosphere and emotion in the stands. The tifos, pyros and noise from both sets of fans are notorious in world football. But then what else would you expect from two of the most successful teams in Moroccan football history? At 8, we head to Mexico. You know it's a serious rivalry when the match is being labelled as a Super Clasico, and that is exactly what Club America vs CD Guadalajara is. Though Club America lead Chivas 12-11 in league titles, that's the last thing on the agenda when these two sides meet. El Super Clasico is 90 minutes of pure tension, drama and hatred, as evidenced in 1983 when there was a riot during the match between the players. That's how much this Clasico means. And even though there has not been as much trouble recently, this Super Clasico is still unmissable. At 7, we have Germany's Clasico between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. The Clasico is a relatively new rivalry, but what it lacks in duration and experience, it makes up for in pure footballing quality. The two most successful clubs in Germany play some of the most aesthetically pleasing football in the world, but this does not mean that they see eye to eye. Bayern's pinching of some of Dortmund's star players over the last few years has fueled the mutual hatred, and though Dortmund are far off of Bayern's record 25 Bundesliga titles, they like nothing more than to get one over their Bavarian bullies. At 6, it's Porto vs Benfica. As representatives of two of the biggest cities in Portugal, both Porto and Benfica have competed politically and culturally for decades. But in the last 20 years, Portugal's O Clásico has taken on a life of its own. 30 of the last 33 league titles have been won by Porto or Benfica, and no team has interrupted the Porto-Benfica League duopoly for over a decade. And don't expect any team to do so either, because this rivalry shows no sign of stopping. At 5, it's Italy's classic, Juve vs Inter. In a country that boasts several world-renowned football rivalries, it's hard to stand out. That is unless it's Juventus against Inter. Though there are fiercer derbies, this is by far the most intense between clubs from different cities. Before the Berlusconi era, Inter and Juventus were always the two most dominant teams in the country, and it revived in spectacular fashion in 2006 when Inter paraded the Serie A title that Juventus won after the Italian Football Federation took it off the old lady in the 2006 Calciopoli refereeing scandal. At 4, it's the biggest rivalry in English football. Man United vs Liverpool. This is a rivalry between two cities, two peerless histories, and two of the most popular and successful clubs in world football. They've exchanged eras of dominance, from the 50s and 60s of United to the 70s and 80s of Liverpool, and back to United in the 90s and 2000s. One thing that they rarely exchange though is pleasantries, with recent history of this fixture including snubbed handshakes, malicious fouls, and controversial celebrations. Needless to say, this is a Clasico rivalry that will keep on giving. At 3, Marseille PSG. France's Le Classique between PSG and Marseille is more than just a football rivalry. It's a rivalry between cities. Paris, the historical hub of high society, against Marseille, the perennial port of the working class. On the pitch, it's fierce to say the least. What else would you expect between two of the most successful, popular and dominant football clubs in the country's history? Marseille lead PSG with 10 league earned titles to 5. But with PSG's oil-filled ascendance, this rivalry will only grow fiercer. At 2, it's the inimitable Clasico between Croatian football's two most successful clubs, HAJDUK Split and fierce rivals Dynamo Zagreb. Croatia's eternal derby is what Clasicos are all about. Incredible atmospheres, extraordinary fan displays, and unmissable football on the pitch. Their rivalry truly lifted off when Croatia gained independence from Yugoslavia in 1991. And since then, both HAJDUK and Dynamo have won 23 out of 24 Croatian league titles. The Clasico is famous off the pitch too, with violent confrontations between the notorious Bad Blue Boys ultras of Dynamo and Torcida ultras of HAJDUK, often requiring police intervention. And at number 1, it is simply El Clasico. Barcelona vs Real Madrid is the most watched and most famous club match in football. But then what else would two of the most successful teams in football history provide you? These two teams have always possessed some of the greatest players in the world, and this has made for some incredible clashes in both domestic and European competitions. Currently, it's Messi vs Ronaldo, but beyond that, it has always been the Nou Camp vs the Bernabeu, Visa Barça vs Ala Madrid, and ultimately, Catalunya vs Castilla. Their mutual hatred and rivalry stretches beyond the lines of a pitch and the stands of a stadium, permeating culture, politics, and much, much more. It's what Spanish football is all about, and what the world waits for. There we go, Copa 90's top 10 Clasico derbies. But have we missed one? Let us know in the comments section, and if you enjoyed the video, of course, like it and subscribe to Copa 90.